It's up. Go ahead and bring me in.
Yep, you're in.
Hey, let's start the show.
It's March 5th, 2015. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. I'm Will Smith. Norman Chan.
I'm all the way at the end today.
You're at the end of the table again. I don't know. The whole world's upside down. We're trying new stuff here. We're joined today by friend of Tested, Samantha Coleman.
Hello.
I think I met you the first time at PAX Prime, maybe the first time I went, right?
Oh, really? Okay. I remember that because I'd been watching, been a fan of the whiskey when you guys were working with Giant Bomb. So it was after the Giant Bomb panel.
Probably, yeah.
I was just kind of lurking. There were all the people kind of congregating up at the front at the end of the panel. And I was like, oh my God, there's Will Smith and Norm. I gotta say hi.
You grabbed me and said, and I'm going to rough approximation. You said, hey, I know about testing.
Did I say that?
That's what you said.
It sounds like something I would say.
We had a nice talk, though. So back then, I think you did a whole bunch of other stuff. Right now, people may know you because you're building your own game, an indie game called Centrus. I mean, I'll let you describe it because it's your game. But.
Yeah, so Centrus is a musical performance puzzle game. It uses like abstract shapes. I chose circles because you have a spinning loop, so you can play different sounds using these different blocks. You drop the blocks into the spinning loop, and you build your own song one note at a time. There's also a puzzle aspect around certain positions to put certain instruments or certain pitches, but a lot of freedom within those boundaries. So it really is all the puzzle mechanics and the visuals are really designed to facilitate the creation of original music.
So, like I played a little bit of Centrus.
Yeah.
We've talked about it some. Like any musical instrument, some people can make beautiful music. I have made some fairly horrendous compositions so far, but I feel like with practice, will come more.
I'm trying to assist people that have felt musically inclined, but maybe never had the opportunity to learn how to play an instrument or hadn't been able to stick with it, using game mechanics and also by sort of assisting people with in terms of like, here's a suggested melody, but you can maybe play it out of order however you want. Then it's kind of like an attempt to incept the idea that you can make music if you just stick with it a little bit. And if you like something, like if you make something, even if it doesn't sound like a pop song you'd hear on the radio, it's still yours.
It still sounds like music.
Yeah. And you can come back to it and you can actually improve. And I believe these skills are applicable to other instruments.
Is it difficult to balance how much like hand holding you need to give and how much like that bottom framework? Because music is difficult.
Yeah, that's been one of the core problems, the core challenges of the game's development for the last couple of years. Where I've landed now, I just pushed a Honeycomb update to it's called the Honeycomb Update, and that's on Steam Early Access now. And where I've landed with that is 3 distinctive modes. There's puzzle mode, which is an ordered experience.
Okay.
There's remix mode, where you have a lot more freedom to choose, like, oh, I want this note here.
When you say ordered experience, you mean there's a set series of challenges that people have to complete?
So like in Tetris, you have like a next block. So in Centrus, you have a sequence of next blocks, and those are all hand-defined. As different notes, like maybe C, E, G, or whatever. And so in puzzle mode, you have to play them in order. And there's a puzzle to solve specifically with them. In remix mode, you can choose them out of order, which makes the puzzles easier to solve because you can choose any note you want to play at any time. But it also allows more expression. And then there's a new thing, which I'm really proud of, which is called performance mode, where the honeycomb symbol is like 7 hexagons in this cluster. And it represents a major scale or a minor scale. So you have the root note in the center, and then it goes clockwise around. And in performance mode, you can actually manipulate the honeycomb shape directly to play and add the exact sounds that you want at any time.
Oh, cool.
So it really is like,
it's like an instrument.
Yeah.
Anyway, people should go check it out. It's on Steam Early Access. I think it'll probably come up again later because you're here for GDC this week.
Right.
The big thing happening in San Francisco right now, GDC started yesterday, I guess, or maybe today. I'm not sure. The conference is.
So it started on Monday. Yeah.
We're recording in the past. It's Tuesday instead of the usual Wednesday for us today.
And that's panels and all the meetings, and then the convention
floor.
expo floor is open today.
Wednesday.
Tomorrow,
Wednesday.
yeah.
Yesterday.
Wednesday. Crazy.
Yeah. Yesterday, tomorrow, it's all the same.
Every day. What is a day? What are days?
And then PAX East starts on Friday. Joey and I are flying out Thursday morning to get to
Cool.
Boston.
Yeah.
We'll be there. We're doing a bunch of dads panel. If you don't know that, I've tweeted it a bunch.
Cool.
But we have myself, Vinny Caravella will be there. Chris Kohler from Wired, who is a brand new dad. I think he's bringing his 5-month-old child, daughter or son. I'm not sure which one.
I want to go to that panel. That sounds like
It's on Friday at noon in Bumblebee, I believe. So if you're free
cool.
Friday at noon at Bumblebee, totally come by.
In the snow, Boston.
Yeah, it's not going to be that cold. They say it's only going to be 30. So
bad at all.
I'm not equipped for that kind of temperature these days. This will be the Munchkins' first trip to see snow, I think, if they're assuming there's any left of the 100 or so inches that they've gotten in Boston this year. So you're going to PAX East as well, right?
Yeah, I'm jumping on a plane. In fact, I'm probably on a plane as you're hearing this.
Are you doing panels and stuff there? Or are you just kind of walking around and playing games and looking at stuff?
Yeah, I want to walk around and play the games for sure. I have a mega booth.
Okay.
For Centrus, so it's 4167. Anyone that's at PAX East.
Mega Booth is one of our favorite things
Really?
about PAX. Yeah, I mean, it's just incredibly dense selection of awesome games. You can go in and see a ton of stuff in a short period of time.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's kind of cool for me because I've seen the people there presenting their games over and over now. So PAX is becoming more of like a work party with friends for me, which is great.
It's like summer camp.
Kind of,
Right?
yeah, where you're always hustling at summer camp.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, you're hustling a little more than we are, but you go back and see people that you only see at PAX.
And what's PAX East? How's that different culturally than PAX West, for example? All I know about PAX East is like from Indie Game the movie.
I've never been to PAX East before, so this is my first time.
It's huge. It's actually way bigger.
Like the convention center?
Yeah, it's bigger than PAX Prime. There's more people than PAX Prime.
Wow.
But I'm not sure why. For some reason, PAX Prime kind of is more interesting to the media. So I think it's more. I think it's actually more for the people there.
PAX Prime is the right time of year too, right? So it's like
End of
September, so everybody has their demos for TGS and E3 and all that stuff, and you actually see games that are going to ship in the next couple of weeks, many cases.
Yeah.
Whereas PAX East is in like the no man's land at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Anyway,
I found
I'm excited.
PAX East last year to be a really warm place, and PAX Prime to be a little bit more crowded, a little bit more uncomfortable.
Like welcoming warm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, so the only panel that I'm on is the PAX Mania panel for this ridiculous wrestling thing that we're doing. I challenged Dr. Tracksuit to a match of Saturday Night Slam Masters.
Dr. Tracksuit is... You've got to be careful, man.
Does not
Team
mess
GFB will come in and cut you.
Yeah, well, we're coming up with our own team, so
Okay.
we're gonna bring the noise. We're gonna bring the pain.
Well, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you, yeah.
I mean, Dr. Tracksuit, just watch your back all the time. It's an unstoppable killing machine.
Totally.
Should we talk about... Last week was real weird, guys. There were llamas, and there was this dress that some people thought was blue and black, and some people thought was white and gold.
I don't know how much we want to talk about this since both
like-
of those are flash in the pans.
I want to talk about it.
Incredibly flashy, but the llamas, I think fewer people caught that. So start with the llamas.
So, I like, for me, it's just a weird thing because occasionally the internet just goes crazy. It's always happened, but this was the largest scale thing. At one point on Thursday, my mom sent me a note and was like, "Hey, have you seen this dress? What color is it?" And when that happens, usually it takes 3 or 4 months for things to filter out from the level of the internet on which I reside to get to like my mom through the Today Show or something.
Well, it turns out all those local radio stations and TV stations also have internet access.
It's true.
and are on Reddit.
So the first thing that happened in the morning, I completely missed this because we were shooting with Adam, and then I got in the car to go pick up my daughter and take her to lunch, and then I came back and I picked up my phone and everybody on Twitter was talking about llamas, and I just turned it off and put it down face down on the table, so I forgot about it. But what
it just 2 llamas went loose in Sun City, Arizona, and it was live streamed. So that's the big tech thing. It was live streamed
Like from a helicopter or
from
something?
helicopters, stable helicopter cameras. The camera technology is there. It was high def video, the streaming technology's there, and the social media platforms are there for people to immediately make memes about them.
It's all the technology that LA local news uses to broadcast car chases,
Yep, exactly.
but
Yep.
applied toward llama
Yes.
wrangling.
And it was
technology.
over before you knew it.
Like how long were the llamas
Like
loose?
half an hour.
Did they have to call in some sort of special llama wrangler, like the
There were
wolf of llamas?
there were definitely dudes in the back of pickup trucks with lassos.
Really?
Wow.
Are you kidding?
No. Cops on foot chasing them. They went through traffic at some point. They caught one first and then the other, and everyone dug into their deepest internet well to make the best joke they could.
Wow.
I was impressed at how clever they were and how much they avoided being caught by things.
The
and just-
jokes of the llamas. I guess the
both.
llamas. Yeah, okay. And then in the evening hours, somebody posted on Tumblr a picture and said, "Help, guys! Is this dress white and gold or blue and black?" Norm, which team are you on?
It was blue and black. I cannot see the other color, no matter how the color balance or white balance or environment or screen changes.
Samantha, have you seen the dress?
When I first saw it, it jumped out immediately as white and gold to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Did it ever switch?
I think that when I sat and looked at the lighting and tried to look at it as blue and black, I had to use my imagination in that particular photo.
You did the magic eye thing where you're kind of squint at, remember those?
Yeah, and I'm good at magic eyes too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a strange phenomenon, but
I feel like it's one of those things that once your neurotransmitters are locked, the sense of it was a weird feeling for me, knowing physiologically how that works in the chemicals in your brain, and realizing I couldn't go back to unlock that connection.
So
And that felt sad.
for me, it started out as blue and black, undeniably. I saved it on my phone just to make sure there's no trickery and that those bastards at Vice weren't switching images every time
BuzzFeed.
you reload.
Right.
Give them the credit.
Well, I was on
41 million page views.
I couldn't find the picture
Aspire to that.
on BuzzFeed.
They had to throw more internet at it.
They did. The article about how they handled the load on that was pretty interesting. Some of their server folk explained what they did to take the hit because
Which is really funny because just was it a month and a half ago, there was that Kim Kardashian thing, which was orchestrated to quote unquote break the internet.
the butt picture.
Yes,
Okay.
the butt picture, and there was a similar, their publisher and their engineering team did a similar long post about, how they tested everything beforehand, how they ran simulation to simulate what if, a million people were on their site at the same time and what the load would be, and from an engineering standpoint, that was a much more interesting post, but in the end, all that planning, it worked, and so the internet didn't break, their website didn't break at all.
Well, the difference though is that BuzzFeed didn't plan this.
Exactly.
This
So
was
that's
literally an
what I'm
opportunistic thing.
Yeah, so from a technical standpoint, the other one for the magazine that ran it
was
was
W,
more
I
interesting, and then the BuzzFeed one, I think, had the bigger impact because it was so spontaneous and happened in real time, and they had their chat logs.
So the thing that was weird for me is when I opened up the article to show my wife later that night and say, "Hey, what color is this dress?" which is the thing that everybody did. I saw it as white and gold when I opened it at night, and without bright ambient lights, with a dim backlight on the phone. And now I can't change it.
You can't see that
No,
again?
I can't see it again. I'm just
Okay.
chasing the white and gold dragon over
I also
here.
saw it at night for the first time, which may be also part of it.
Take it out in the sunlight, hold it out in the bright sunlight. It's a white balance. So it's a white balance thing, basically, is your eye is adjusting based on. Some people perceive the cues in the picture differently than other people, and if you perceive it one way, you see white and gold. If you perceive it the other way, it's blue. It is undeniably a blue and black dress.
The actual picture of
actual-
what the dress is, yes. And the thing that I'm curious about is, can image algorithms and or cognitive scientists recreate this phenomena as they can with optical illusions?
You mean like the white bar GIFs?
Or just recreate an arrangement. What about this arrangement, the composition, the lighting of this poor cell phone picture, offer the right mix of to stand right in the middle?
Yeah.
And can you replicate that? Can you duplicate that?
It's kind of like Hamlet, written by an infinite number of monkeys, right? If you send an infinite number of monkeys out on the planet,
I trust
with
that
smartphones,
computers will be able to solve this problem.
Oh, I agree.
And that's going to be really exciting. I want the opportunity to rewire.
You want that Instagram filter,
I want to rewire the brain and see the other side.
the dress filter. Okay.
Maybe we can develop some sunglasses where you can just choose what you want the world to look like at whim.
Oh, that's
Obey.
coming.
Obey.
I mean, isn't that what augmented reality is? Hey, I don't like this world. I want the Werner Vinge world instead.
That
Okay.
sounds, yeah, or Escher.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of VR, okay, hold on. We got a sad note. Leonard Nimoy died last week at the age of 83. It was super sad.
Such a loss.
I had a premonition about this 4 days before it happened.
Really?
Because I read in a news story that he had been to the hospital.
been
and
sick,
then
yeah.
It was. I think we talk about people who've affected lives, and I know last year with Robin Williams, that was a huge deal for a lot of people who grew up with him. But Leonard Nimoy, I think, had much farther reach than the mainstream that we would think.
I think in our circle, Leonard Nimoy was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, the bad TV station at my grandparents' house in DC, like the not NBC, CBS, or ABC, like some local DC thing, would show like this amazing science fiction block on weekday afternoons that was original Star Trek. This is before The Next Generation, Buck Rogers, the 70s Buck
Okay,
Rogers,
cool.
and then Doctor Who, like 60s, 70s Doctor Who. Well, that was a little rough, but the first two parts, the Star Trek and the Buck Rogers, we were locked in front of the TV for 2 hours basically for that because it was amazing.
And I mean, on the bright side, things that came out about him, all the retrospectives and the obituaries and the write-ups about Leonard Nimoy really brought to light what a stand-up guy he was, and I don't think a lot of people knew that. People know him for Spock and know him for some of his roles. He directed 3 Men and a Baby, I think.
Yes.
And one or two of the Star Trek films. I know he did Star Trek 4.
Directed
Two?
4 and 3, I think, right?
He might have done, I think he did 3 as well. But just like people know him for his relationship with other cast members and his friendship with William Shatner, but he was writing poetry to the very end. He did all these things, and just what a great person. Also, he's the same age as Shatner, and Shatner
Really?
was
Shatner's
fantastic.
83?
Shatner's gonna be 84 this year.
Wow.
They were both 50 when I want to say Wrath of Khan.
Middle-aged Pudge was definitely in evidence there.
Yeah, and that was 1980 something.
So at this point, we only have 4, I guess, cast members left, right? Because Shatner, Nichelle Nichols,
George Takei.
and Walter Koenig.
Yes, I believe that is true.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I remember Leonard Nimoy's musical career.
Oh, the Hobbit song.
The Hobbit song,
Yeah.
and the music video especially were
I never
I've
saw
never
that.
seen that.
highlights of my interneting as a teenager.
Like that's the kind of thing that when you find out exists, you can't help but go look for it, right?
Right.
You know it's going to be bad.
It's Bilbo Baggins. Yeah.
Wow.
And he just did 2 years ago a car commercial where he hummed that song.
Really?
Yeah, with Zachary Quinto.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Being really impressed.
Yeah, it's like a
so-
Volkswagen ad or something.
Anyway, live long and prosper, Leonard. Thank you for what you did. There's a lot of VR stuff happening this week. Like that's a hard swing. I apologize, but I don't know how to do that any better. There's a ton of VR stuff coming out this week. Valve kind of did their secret announcement of their VR thing that everybody knew that they were making, but no one had ever actually confirmed.
Well, they said so many times, we're not doing our hardware. We're just developing a platform for developers.
Because they announced the VR API last year
Yeah.
at Dev Days. Everyone, I think it was kind of unspoken thing in the game community that everyone knew they'd experimented with hardware. And when Abrash was there, they had invited developers over and even some VR enthusiasts over to check out that VR room. That's the room that Brendan Reeb talks about. the first time he felt real presence
He-
was
Yeah.
the QR code room.
And Brendan has problems with
And he's
with
yeah,
VR.
he's talked about how he suffers from the motion sickness the most. That company, and so we didn't know with Airbrush leaving whether they would continue working on the platform, and it really makes sense that they would partner with someone to do hardware. So at Mobile World Congress, HTC announced that they would be doing the HTC Vive,
Okay.
which isn't the singular Steam VR goggles because it is something that the other hardware companies will make, but it is the flagship one and the first one that will launch this year, holiday 2015.
So it's like the Note and Gear VR. Is it similar to that, or is it a standalone headset?
It's
Is
a
it-
standalone headset that
Okay.
connects to a computer, so it's tethered. And tons of sensors on the outside. It still looks like a big C goggle display, giant plastic thing in front of your face. Even it looks. I mean, we haven't put it on yet as of today, but
Tuesday.
Tuesday it looks heavy.
Yeah.
And they checkbox all the right specs. So instead of using one panel, one 1080p or one 1440p panel, it uses two 1200 by 1080 panels, one for each eye,
Okay.
with lenses for each of those. 90 hertz, that's what Crescent Bay from Oculus is currently running, for low persistence. We don't know if it's AMOLED or LCD panel, but I assume it's AMOLED because that's one of the ways you can get low persistence, that you can turn off the lights in sync. And then there's a lot of interesting, and there's headphone jacks. It won't have built-in audio, but the tracking, the head tracking, is the thing that really separates this from Crescent Bay. It has, in addition to 360-degree head tracking, it will
Using
be
gyroscopes and accelerometers.
accelerometers. It will also have a laser base, what they say is a laser base tracking system with a base station. So you'll have a wireless base station that you put in the corner of the room, which will track your movement, your volumetric movement. And even though the headset itself is going to be tethered to your computer because it has a HDMI cable, you're going to be able to walk around your room in a 15-foot by 15-foot space.
Wow.
I'm really excited about this. I got to do the Valve demo last year.
At Dev Days, or
It's the same demo from Dev Days,
Okay.
but they were so booked after that thing was so successful and interesting that I couldn't get in for about 6 months.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow.
I tried it last summer, and it's really phenomenal. And I walked into that demo a skeptic, having tried the first version of Oculus and feeling like, well, it's just not really there. I walked out of this Valve demo a believer in VR.
did you?
So it's a QR code demo.
It's the QR
So
code
that's
demo.
a room. And how big is that room?
Small. It's the size of like a small office. It
Okay.
is a small office, like a little triangular shaped room.
But no desks or anything in the room.
There's one desk.
Okay.
There's one desk where there's the person that's running the demo would sit and operate it. It's a series of scenes that you move through. I'm looking at a picture of the Vive, and this looks much more elegant. It's kind of a cool shape and weird, but the prototype hardware was really like you could see the back of the LCD panels on
right.
the headset. So QR codes around the room. You could walk around. You put this thing on, and it's just a series of scenes. The first one was like kind of an abstract space, like wide open, vast space with just particles floating around.
Okay. Like a matrix loading construct or something like that? Or
Yeah,
not?
basically,
Okay.
it was black background with white cubes, and just to give you a sense of like, here's, you have no body. Here's how, when you move your head around, as you look around, as you move around, here's how you move through the space.
Positional tracking. Let's say
Yeah, yeah.
And what did it actively prevent you from walking into the wall?
No.
Oh.
So, in talking with the guy running the demo, people have lots of different experiences running into the wall. Some people did. So there was a little tiny gap at the bridge of the nose.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I could also just kind of look down and see like, am I close to the wall or not?
Right,
And I would
right,
also
right.
try to be aware of my space. But that's a thing, right? Like running into a wall is
Yeah.
a thing. One of the cool demos was they put me in a 3D untextured room that was the
Ooh.
exact same shape of the room that I was actually
Oh,
in.
that's so cool.
So
Oh, man.
there's a lamp right where there's a lamp in the room. So you can walk up and like try to like reach out and touch the lamp, and you can see it in VR and you can feel it in the real world.
So the mapping was correct.
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
space.
it was
That
laid out,
is
yeah.
trippy
Wow.
because they would need to have the height and also,
Well, they have your height.
yeah, the positional tracking, but the optics would have to be perfect because
They are, I think.
the Gear VR, which is the Samsung accessory for the Note 4, partnered with Oculus, has
Yeah.
a pass-through mode.
Right.
So the camera, when the Vive, I believe, also will have a camera. I'm not 100% sure about that, but when you have the camera pass-through mode, it's actually a small window because the camera on that phone isn't a wide-angle camera, but they've done it. It's a small window. It works because it has almost one-to-one mapping, except of course when you get your hand close to your face because there's only one camera. It's not stereo camera.
Right.
But that is a really cool demo
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have that untextured room. I didn't heard of that before. Now, how were you tethered? And was someone walking around with a cable?
The room was not big enough to need someone following me. There was a big cable coming out of the back of the headset, going back to this computer. I think it was dual HDMI's at the time or something.
For one for each screen, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was it was a little clunky, but the accuracy. So that the 90 frames per second is a big deal.
Yep.
And the head tracking that they had, the positional tracking, was this sub-millimeter. So that, like, those things together were big contributors to presence, what people talk about, presence. It's such a hard thing to describe until you experience it.
A feeling of space.
A feeling of, that was the first time where I felt like I am a physical being, like tangibly occupying a virtual space.
You had a
Yeah.
sense of proprioception for the space that your body takes in the virtual world.
Yeah. So there was a phenomenon when I was done. So, there's a dozen scenes or so, then you step through the scenes and it's a hard cut from scene to scene. And it's a little bit like, whoa, okay. But I've had experiences where taking off the Oculus when I'm done and readjusting to the real world was like, whoa. With this, taking off the headset took no more adjustment than adjusting to each cut of the scene.
Oh, wow.
So there's something going on with our brains in this experience where we accept it as a plausible reality, even though it looks like a 3D rendered space.
Well, and this is the thing that's hard for me to like. So Norm and I have had a couple of Oculus demos, and actually one of the Morpheus demos as well, where they rendered your body in the scene, and while they weren't necessarily doing limb tracking or anything like that, they were close enough that when you look down, you saw your feet, and you're like, oh, okay, this is like, I get this, I'm real. And you get just the barest taste of that. Did you feel like?
I think that what you're describing is a feeling of presence that works on a conscious level, and the things that contribute to what made the Valve demo remarkable work on an unconscious level.
Okay, so you think it's just the smooth movement through the world, being the right height, stuff like that.
Also the density of the pixels, like I like the Gear VR, but I can't stand the size of the pixels when I have it on.
So that's another question. The resolution of Vive is technically lower than Gear VR, and we don't know what the resolution of Crescent Bay, the Oculus prototype, is, but it looks better. I think Crescent Bay looks better in Gear VR because of the optics. So 2 questions about the optics. With the 2 screens on the Vive, we assume that field of view is going to be wider because there are 480 more pixels total to work with. Did the field of view in that demo you saw last year, was that pretty wide?
It was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't like a wraparound or anything, but the screens were very large and kind of protruded sideways out a bit. So you could get the peripheral vision with the optics they felt good. They felt right.
So it did look like binocular vision.
Yeah, or like
didn't.
right now with the Oculus, you kind of look like you're looking through a dive mask, right? Where you have something up around your face, and if you have more, I can't wait.
And that was a
to try
complaint
this
that people
demo.
had from the developer kit 1 to 2, and even with Crescent Bay, field of view went down between developer 1 and 2, and people really, I think a benchmark is like 120 degrees is where we want to be at. So I'm really curious to see how Vive will compare.
Just the idea that you can put a headset on that has enough visual,
fidelity.
Fidelity. That's exactly the right word. To hotwire your brain into thinking you're in a virtual place is something that is conceptually difficult for me to grasp.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they say presence is a thing. It's hard to describe. You just have to try it. And
Yeah.
I was so pissed off when they would say that for the longest time because it felt like a cop-out. But after trying it, I really understand it is something you need to experience.
So when the first time I had the barest taste was in the Morpheus demo when you're riding in a shark cage down to the bottom of the ocean.
Okay.
And they were using the Sony camera and the lights on the headset to tell what your height was. So when you duck down, the perspective would duck down at the right place, your knees would bend. And like you get that feeling, you're like, oh man, this is a thing I would like to keep doing. This is appealing to me. I would like to,
for sure. Like it's these things that contribute to this sense of existing in a space. I would take it even further with the Valve thing, being able to walk around and like use your body to look up and down at things like that also contributes to this physical feeling.
Have you tried Morpheus at all or no?
I haven't. I haven't been able to try it yet. I want to.
And to be clear, the demo that you're talking about is something that they worked on. That was there 6 months to a year ago.
It's a year old.
That's not to say that Vive is going to be 100% better because they have to, of course, build into the costs and limitations of something that's a consumer product. But they have their own benchmark of what they know, and they've tried all the Oculus public demos, Crescent Bay included, so they know what the competition's like. And Oculus, I don't think, is announcing anything. Palmer said not anything at GDC this year. So this is Valve's big time, time to really make a splash.
I think it's great. I mean, I know that what I tried was research, like R&D, and that the Vive is the first step toward making that technology into a consumer level product, and that's really exciting to me. I'm glad it's happening because I'm, now as a VR enthusiast, I want great experiences available to people that are interested in trying it out. So I hope that. It that it does well and makes a splash and actually makes an impression on people.
So they're going to roll this out like Oculus has with the developer release at the end of this year, so that people can build apps. Like, I know this isn't what you're working on now, but have you looked at VR APIs and stuff like that? There's no common platform for developing VR games right now. You have to build to the hardware, right?
Well, so that's the Steam API. They're trying to have I think it's called Steam VR API, and it's essentially one API that you ask it for a field of view or a view frustum math, and then it gives you back the data that you need, kind of shifted based on how which device you're using. So it's acting as a middle. It's a terrible description that I just gave. It's acting as a middle ground between your code that's driving the camera positions and the hardware that's going to display it.
So do you think the analogy of like the early 3D accelerator days where you had proprietary APIs from like 3DFX and then Microsoft and OpenGL both simultaneously made kind of in between man in the middle type layers to help abstract that to make it easier to write? Is it the same thing, or is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, because without this, you do have to handle every case of every device with the minutiae of differences, or sometimes large differences.
Right. Okay. So we'll know more. Norm and I are going to see that tomorrow afternoon. We're going to it's yesterday afternoon for you guys, tomorrow afternoon for us. We're going to hop on Google Hangouts after we do that briefing, and we'll make an addendum that'll be tacked onto the end of the audio version of the podcast, but it'll be a separate video if you're watching on YouTube, so there'll be a link in the description that you can click through to go to that if you want to hear what we think in length about that stuff.
Or just download the audio.
I'm going to look at that because I'm super curious about the new stuff.
I think a lot of people are. So and they're showing that at Mobile World Congress, and HTC is showing it at Mobile World Congress, and Valve's showing it at GDC.
Did you see hear the HTC rep accidentally say that they were working on Half-Life 3?
What? Wait, what? Well, they announced it on 3.3, and it's the third VR prototype.
And HTC is...
There are three of us in the room right now.
3 confirmed. HLTC
rhymes with Half-Life 3.
Yes, that's true. And Vive, if it was pronounced Vive, would also rhyme with 3, kind of.
Where's Gordon Freeman in this mix?
I don't know, man.
I gotta imagine that if this is gonna be Valve's big play for next generation gaming, that unless they're abandoning Half-Life as a franchise, which I don't think they would.
I can't believe we're talking about
That
this.
they are going to put Half-Life on this at some point. Also, we haven't talked about controllers, and someone, that's something I'm really looking forward to using. Someone did tweet, I think people are under embargo right now, that the controller that HTC has made with Valve for this is really intuitive and that works with the standing space. So that's something I'm really curious as well.
I mean, the big question I have is that if they're really doing this the same way they treated the Steam Machine stuff, we're supposed to get an update on Steam Machine stuff as well to see if anything's actually going to come of that. I'm not entirely sold on the idea of Valve saying, "Hey, here's what the platform is. Why don't you guys go build it for us?" I think I'd rather see somebody own the entire, soup to nuts.
You want the Apple way.
I don't necessarily want the Apple way, but I just think about how crappy the first 2 or 3 years of Android were, and like I know they have to be aware of that stuff and have to be looking at it, but I mean fragmentation and differences of implementation on VR stuff are bad, can have bad side effects to the point that if you have one company who wants to save 30 cents on capacitors or get a slightly slower chip for the math processing or whatever. Like it could really dramatically affect the experience. And I still think with VR especially, we're in a situation where one bad experience will sour people forever. And we're not out of the woods for a VR crash of 2016.
I don't think, regardless of what Valve does, I don't think that's going to stop other people from making crappy VR experiences.
Oh, no. There's lots of them.
And I don't think that they would make Vive anything but the best they could make it. So
I think HTC is one of a handful of companies that can actually execute that kind of stuff, right?
So I see no problem with going with the Valve route.
We'll see.
I think the a benefit of all this is that the potential audience for VR is still quite small. So the number of people that are going to be the early adopters of all these different hardware devices is going to be rather small. And I think that for the next, it's going to be a battle of over these kinds of issues.
I don't see people buying more than like one or two.
Exactly.
They're even early adopters.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think that there will be a massive, especially early on, like Wii sports effect, where you bring your VR. Which is a huge benefit for stuff like the Gear VR that's untethered. You can take that to your parents' house and let everybody taste VR without having to drag along a giant gaming PC and all the stuff that goes with that. So who knows? We'll see.
And
It's
that
going to be an interesting 2 years.
That could be what Nvidia is doing. So again, this is
more rumors
because we're talking about this on Tuesday. This evening, Nvidia is hosting a giant event in San Francisco, presumably they say to announce something they've been working on for 5 years. Now, this could be the Grid game streaming thing, but I don't think they would have an event this big for that.
Is the Grid the game streaming, like the server-based game streaming?
Live style.
Okay.
Game it's been beta. You can try that with your Shield tablets and Shield consoles, but. People are saying that it could be their VR device, and some of the reports have come out saying this could be the platform for which they debut their next-gen Tegra chip.
Okay.
Which means it would be more of a Gear VR self-contained device, as opposed to a PC.
Nvidia has developer relations, has deep relations with a massive number of video game developers, right? I mean, they have active outreach on all sides. You tell me, or maybe you can't, but
No, I have no comment.
Let me put it this way. Having used Gear VR and Oculus, and I agree there's a huge, and Oculus said they've thought about but are going to do wireless HDMI. The untethered VR experience has a huge just natural advantage in terms of the mainstream. And two, if you think about VR headsets and the uses, it's going to be very competitive for Oculus and for Valve in terms of the PC game and the enthusiast game space. But there's a lot of opportunity in the casual game space and the media consumption space, things that Gear VR has kind of jumped on. That one, don't require as much processing power, or two, the latency doesn't matter as much, and where you can do things like, if you have a built-in chipset, render your cinema room locally and get all your head tracking done perfectly, but then the actual content can have some delay because it can be just extreme video.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Norm. The Gear VR stuff, I think that headset is also really well tuned for like shorter experiences. So if you think about playing Wii bowling for the first time, you take it over, your grandmother bowls, you play tennis for 5 minutes, everybody goes and has some cocktails, and then comes back and maybe plays again later. But they're not sitting down for 3 hours by themselves, which is something I don't think you can do with the Gear VR. I mean, I know you've watched some movies.
And I mean, you can. It's not the primary use case.
It's not a
the
great
Wii
experience.
analogy is apt because I think the one thing none of these devices have is a way to share the experience with people. Morpheus, you can, in terms of it can be I think they've talked about it being asynchronous experience, or one person will wear a Morpheus and the other players around the PlayStation. They've thought about design elements where it'd be like the Wii U, for example, and
Where
one
there's-
person's
yeah.
doing that, but just even the Wii U, or the Wii bowling style, sharing that only one person has the stick, but everyone watches the bowling game. None of these VR devices so far have a way to project in an undistorted way what the wearer is seeing, so they can you can do fun things in a social environment. And that's something you can do with like Chromecast, but it's not perfect.
Well, I know I've seen a lot of tweets from people saying, "Hey, I'm showing my new VR thing," and they're sitting in a bar with a Gear VR and passing that around so everybody can try it out, which probably only happens at GDC and E3 and a couple maybe PAX.
Yeah.
But like that is a super. If you're making games and you don't have a way to show it without dragging a giant computer with you everywhere, it's a big
Think
deal.
about horror games. How fun that would be, because
No thanks, I'm good.
everyone on the couch laughing their asses off because they can see what you can't see, and you're enclosed in that VR space and the audio.
And then your friends get a bucket of water behind
Exactly.
you. To,
It's the perfect
Oh,
it's the
wow.
perfect social experience. One more of that.
I get excited about that, like a second screen, shared screen, a group of people contributing to some individual's VR experience. I think that there's a lot of potential there.
Did you get to play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes?
That's exactly what I was going to bring
Yeah.
up. It's like that, but implemented in a digital way.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, Keep Talking is a perfect example of a game that could totally be a Gear VR game.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so I think we've talked about VR a fair amount. There'll be more again at the end of the audio version. There'll be a link in the YouTube description if you want to jump over to that. Anything else out of Mobile World Congress that's worth mentioning, Norm?
Bunch of new phones. Both HTC and Samsung announced their new flagships. HTC One M9. Last year was the M8. It's basically the same design, improved hardware on the inside. I don't think it's anything too spectacular. Samsung, their new Galaxy phone is out. So Samsung, of course, is on this every half-year cycle. They have a new flagship phone, either the Note at the end of the year and the Galaxy series at the beginning of the year, which is something that John Carmack talked about being a really good thing in terms of panel development and processor development for his interest in mobile VR. Galaxy S6 looks a lot, from certain angles, I will say, looks a lot like an iPhone 6. Definitely looks a little more polished in terms of the frame than previous versions. Super high resolution display. The Galaxy S6 now has a 1440p display, just like a Note 4 does, except it's not 5.5 inch. It's 5.1 inch, which means it's higher pixel density. And then alongside that, they also announced a new Gear VR made specifically for that.
So they're going to keep making Gear VRs for each of the new large screen phones, I assume? It seems
Yeah,
like-
I mean, unless the form factor for the Note doesn't change, then they can use last year's. But the new Gear VR does something that the last one didn't, which lets you pass through power. So you can plug in because right now there is a micro USB port on Gear VR, but you can't charge your phone while it's plugged in. All it does is activate as like a keyboard.
Okay,
touchpad.
so presumably you could hang a battery in the Gear VR?
Or tether it, to a USB power station.
Okay.
Which
Interesting.
for a couch experience is not the worst thing.
Does it look big? Does it still look huge?
It still looks huge. They say it's lighter. It's a little more balanced for the weight. The S6 is lighter than the Note 4, so ergonomically it's going to be a little better. But
Okay.
it's still all the hardware in the front as opposed to being evenly distributed.
IKEA at Mobile World Congress rolled out some, I think it's key charging stuff. Key-powered bedside tables,
QI,
lamps,
yes.
QI, lamps and desks. So basically, if you have a phone that supports Key, which is a relatively small number,
Qi.
Qi. Okay, I knew it was something like that. There's no U. It's English doesn't prepare me to pronounce that.
That's a great.
I'm still skeptical about the wireless charging stuff. Like, it just seems incredibly wasteful because it's not very efficient.
It is wasteful in terms of energy, but I mean, so many things in our culture are wasteful but convenient. And,
That's true.
There's PowerMat owned by Duracell, and there's Qi, which is an open standard adopted by Google and Asus. And
It's from the Wireless Power Consortium.
yes, and having used the Starbucks PowerMat chargers, I think it's a really nice and convenient thing to have, and it's all about the integration.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants the block that you have to plug in a USB cable to a power.
Right.
If it's built into the table, built into the furniture, it can be an elegant charging solution. And
Well, it has to be built into the phone too. Is the larger
well,
issue?
with the Starbucks, I thought their solution was brilliant because
How does the Starbucks thing work?
When you go into a Starbucks, like when Starbucks announced a PowerMat partnership, I thought this is like
We
really
mocked it.
Yeah, because it sounded really stupid. Because the previous PowerMats, you buy literally a thick mat with a surface area of it's
like a mouse pad.
small mouse pad.
Yeah.
Then you got to buy a case for your iPhone that's compatible with it because it's not built into your phone, and then put that on the mat. So I thought Starbucks was going to have these mats with cables attached to power connectors, and then you have to put a case on your phone. But they spent the money and integrated it into all their countertops and benches and tables. So it's a mat circle that's flush with a table. And then at the tables, they have a small display where they have USB dongles. It looks like a ring, and you take it off and you plug it in. There's like a USB connector, a 30-pin connector, and an iPhone, a lightning cable connector. And then it's super lightweight. You plug in your phone, and then you just lay the phone on top of the table, and it charges. And
Sounds really cool.
It's convenient. I mean, we haven't tested the charging rate for this, but for people who go to Starbucks just to charge their phone or use their laptops, I think it's definitely not a hassle.
Some action cams out of is this Mobile World Congress?
I'm not
as well?
sure if it's Mobile World Congress, but also announced this week. If you asked me 3 years ago, the thing that how I would spend $200-$300, I said the GoPro 2 is like the best thing you could buy, and the GoPro has really changed the world in terms of like offering new perspectives, putting GoPros on dogs, putting on trombones, in addition to all the hula hoops, all the crazy sports stuff that happens, but they've iterated, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company now. They've iterated so fast. I've become really frustrated with the GoPro. GoPro is, I think, the 4 now, and there's like 5 different versions of it: silver, black, black plus, different resolutions, and they've segmented their entire product line to where if you want to buy the high-end one, it's like $500.
And it's difficult to know what you're getting with the high-end one versus
Yes.
the lower-end ones. Like they have a big grid of features, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to probably use them for 1080p video, which they've been able to do for 3 years.
And it's
on the $200
and
one.
it's almost not as not necessarily planned obsolescence, but iterating so quickly, it lets them be maybe a little more careless in terms of their stability. And we've had problems with GoPros and crashing, overheating, and it sucks to have spent $400 last year only to have the newer one with a better UI.
Fixes the
this
janky
year.
problems, yeah.
So a bunch of companies have now released basically very similar GoPro style cameras, much cheaper. On the quadcopter FPV scene, a lot of people use what's called a Mobius camera. It's I think made by a Chinese company. $80 shipped on Amazon, 1080p, decent quality. We actually reviewed it
Wow.
on the site. I have one of those. I think it compares well to a GoPro Hero 2. But then just announced this year, and this is a company name I don't know exactly how to pronounce. It's Xiaomi.
Xiaomi?
Yeah, they do.
They do the smartphones that everyone says is like, oh, this
Right.
is the Apple killer in China.
They're a massive phone seller in Asia.
They have their GoPro competitor, which does 1080p 60, uses the same, a really good Sony image sensor, and it's $64.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, the thing that drove GoPro's success early on, it sounds like there's some sort of police chase over there. I hear helicopters and all sorts of trucks. the thing that drove a lot of GoPro's early success is that people used them in production environments because the quality was pretty good, and they were $200 or $300. So, like, if I lose a $200 or $300 camera personally, I'm pretty sad. But if you're talking about somebody that's spending a couple $1 million an episode on a TV show, then losing $200 cameras, not that big a deal.
Right.
And it opened up a lot of possibility because you couldn't typically get that kind of quality out of something that's disposable. At $64, they actually are disposable. Like, it's not even something, as long as the SD card survives, everything's cool.
It's just amazing to me, like how the technology keeps, simple, becoming more accessible in this way, like getting cheaper. Like, it kind of blows my mind. Like, a camera like this for $64, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it means that you don't need to have a good phone camera anymore necessarily, right?
Now we can start to like hit record and then throw a thing just to see, like, get some awesome view points. I don't know.
Suction cup it on a football and see what it looks like. Google's going to change the way that they rank sites, which I think is, Google is literally always changing the way it ranks sites. But currently, and since the dawn of Google's dominion, they've used the number of inbound links as a relative metric for the value of a site. So if you have a lot of inbound links, if there's a lot of inbound links to tested that say things like Oculus VR TF2 in them, then we will rank highly for searches that people search for Oculus VR and TF2. They're shifting because there's a problem with the way this works, and it means that sites that have misinformation, for example, anti-vaxxer sites and stuff that has a lot of links around because people are linking from all over the place, lots of links from social media, which were kind of difficult. They've been adapting to over the last 10 years because that stuff didn't exist. It was when Google started, it was hard. It was like difficult for somebody to build a website. You had to go someplace, you had to sign up for a domain, you had to install WordPress or Movable Type probably at the time. And then, you had to actually update it. It was a pain in the ass. With Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and all that stuff, it's easy for virtually anybody to generate tons and tons and tons of inbound links. So they're devaluing the link and they're using facts instead of links. So things that they know, things that Google knows are true. If the site contains things that people know are true, people are linking to that for that item. There's links that have those facts. This
is extra scary to me. I think about the the dystopian state presented by Metal Gear Solid 2. It's control of information.
There's two. Yeah, like on one hand, I think it's good, right? Because I want to devalue untrue things. And I want to value up true things.
Right, but who decides what's true and what's not?
I don't think I want Google to decide what's true.
I definitely don't.
I mean, on the other hand, though, the knowledge graph is pretty good. Like, it can tell me, oh yeah, I'm tall enough to ride the roller coaster in Santa Cruz. So I mean, I assume that there's going to be white papers and stuff posted about this. Maybe it's something they'll talk about at I/O. But like, it's a really massive change in the way Google. It potentially could be a really massive change in the way Google indexes the web, which is still like the most valuable thing that company does. For me, I mean, I search for Google constantly all day long. So I mean, it's something everybody should be aware of, and just kind of keep an eye peeled for it to see. The change hasn't happened yet.
Okay,
they're working on it.
It'll be interesting to see how if there are any patterns that emerge of like, this is like Google's been weird lately, like what's going on, kind of thing. Well, if people notice this change.
So as a site, as somebody, we're always paying attention to this because small changes on Google, whether it's that we accidentally trip a spam detection thing because we have the same description on every page on the site because somebody copied and pasted the wrong thing when they were rolling out a template. Like small changes can make a huge difference in the amount of traffic we get from Google. But I think that this is probably a thing that's good for sites like ours, where we do just factual report on things that we find interesting.
I wonder about the scale of news or scale of facts, like. Does that mean that you even if you're saying something that's true, if you have a blog and you're talking about like your work, for example, if these are facts, like does Google have a way to verify these facts? And if it doesn't, if people are searching for what you're doing, is it going to be not discoverable?
Are they going to? They just trust the wisdom of the crowd, which is not always that wise. Same with social media,
right?
It's exactly the same. And the way people discover and links and information and content on the web right now, it's kind of fragmented. You have Facebook, which kind of everyone acknowledges how fickle Facebook's algorithms are, and how filtered and
How likely they are to promote you more if you pay them versus not.
Yes, and what a Facebook curated experience. But that is for many people how they experience and discover content on the web. On Twitter and other social media, where it's less filtered and less curated, the curation is done by you, but then it's an echo chamber, and then Google is everyone assumes to be the most fair and unbiased. That unbiased comes at the risk of the bad wisdom of linking in the crowds.
Well, I mean, on the plus side, if Google applies bias and that makes the search results worse, people will stop using Google as much. I mean, there is.
I know it takes a lot for that to happen. The momentum is so strong.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, that's the problem.
People will bitch about it on Twitter. Then.
Unfortunately, there is no alternative because the web,
Bing,
as a location.
17 or 18%.
And I'm saying, like, outside search engines and social media.
Oh, right.
There is no alternative to discover content.
I think that people will always find a way to take advantage of the systems, like like the search engine optimization, SEO, and all these things. Those formulas may change, but there will be still people that break down what's happening and then do what's needed to get their results up higher, which is shady, but that's a thing.
Well, and then Google, it's a never-ending war, right?
Yeah.
Is that Google, things change, people take advantage of it, Google changes the thing back again, and then they have to take advantage of it in a new way.
What if Chrome, every time you went to a website, Chrome popped up a little window that says, is this true? Yes, no.
I mean, there are worse ways to do this. The problem is that then you're asking the inmates to run the asylum, which I guess is what we've been doing anyway. I don't know. It was much easier when fewer people had ways to post links on the web. I guess that's the takeaway.
We should go back to that.
Yeah, just turn it all off.
Web crawling.
We really messed up with this net neutrality thing.
Right.
We need to keep it the create.
Yahoo directory.
Let's get on Lycos, guys.
Alta Vista.
We talked about that last week, but we should update the net neutrality stuff. The FCC behaved as expected, as we talked about last week, which is super good news. I think that's really, there's going to be legislation. There's going to be lawsuits. It's going to take a long time to shake it all out, but we're moving in the right direction, at least for right now.
It makes me really happy and relieved.
Yeah.
I was nervous for a while there.
Did you see that Verizon posted a press release in Morse code?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. We're moving the internet back to the old ways. It was
Freaking
lame.
jerks.
Pebble updated their Kickstarter for the time this morning, Tuesday morning.
Oh boy, this is the thing that we were talking about this
We
yesterday. We were talking about this yesterday with Jeremy.
Oh, right.
Jeremy Williams, our other regular podcast guest. He Pebble, which we talked about last week, announced their Kickstarter, which has now become the most successful Kickstarter. And there's been some debate about whether this is a good idea, because they are literally using Kickstarter as a pre-order system, and so they can get the money 6 days after.
That's what Kickstarter's for.
It's not what it's supposed to be.
It's not what it's supposed to be for.
It is. I think it's a fundamental truth of human nature is that this is how we're trained to think about products and consumerism, and this is so many of us can only look at something like Kickstarter through that lens.
If you ask the people who made Kickstarter, though, they say yes. This is I don't want to speak for them, but my assumption of what they would say is that, look, this is a way for this company to make a product exist without having to take a bunch of money or a really high risk short term loan.
But that's not exactly.
That's what Kickstarter's for.
But that's not Pebble. The Pebble implementation of that, they absolutely didn't have to do that.
I think that they did. Oh hell. Continuity's biting me in the ass every time.
They didn't have to. They could have got. The outside funding. Of course, Kickstarter wants to say this because they get a cut,
right?
And they want more money to be funneled through Kickstarter,
right?
But I agree with Smith that the ideal of Kickstarter, which other crowdfunding sites have adopted, is what got Kickstarter its the goodwill, and these kind of high profile pre-order initiatives are overshadowing a lot of the actual innovation that happens with small projects.
Oh man, I have so much to say.
Well, you funded your game on Kickstarter.
I
full
did.
disclosure.
I'm on both sides. I was a backer for the first Pebble, and a backer for Ouya, and a bunch of other games and weird things. And then I created a Kickstarter campaign for Centrus, which was successful. And gosh, so much to say about Kickstarter. I think that wow, and so many things are all coming to a blank at this moment.
So not to jump in,
Sure.
I'll give you a sec.
Yeah, give me a moment.
I mean, I think that the thing that Kickstarter should do, and the thing that it does, is lets people who have things, whether they're physical, tangible things, or dumb, silly ideas
Yeah.
or projects, it lets them. There's a way to get people who are also into those same things to fund them, rather than having to go to VCs or take out loans or borrow money from your
Absolutely.
parents.
It's also an excellent way to test the market.
Right.
That's still that's something I feel like people don't talk about so much. Like if it's a great way for a company or an individual in any capacity to, like, as a creator, you know what you want to do and you know how you want it to be received, but you never know how it will actually be received. So getting a sense of, okay, well, this is what we're doing. How much interest is there, and how viable is this thing to be existing as a product? Or if you're more on the art side, then well, maybe I just find a different way to support my art, right? It's definitely a community-driven activity.
So where are the boundaries? At which point does a company become
I
too
don't
big?
think there have to be
So what
boundaries.
if Apple went on Kickstarter and say we're going to deliver a product 2 years from now, but we're doing a Kickstarter?
Are you going to back that? That's the boundary, right?
I mean, what they're promising is first in line, so it's a queue system. It's a pre-order queue system. That's all it is.
Look,
the backing. You're not supporting Kickstarter. You're getting ahead in the queue, and you're paying, well before you get the product on a promise, with all the caveats still at the bottom.
So I look at because there was a lot of controversy when Double Fine did the Broken Age Kickstarter. It was a $400,000 Kickstarter. I think they ended up raising $4 or $5 million. It was a ton of money at the time.
I would consider that a risk, though,
For who?
for Double Fine to do it.
Why?
Because the game was a risk.
Well, they wouldn't have made that game if they had not funded it on Kickstarter.
Exactly, and
That's
I think
true.
for Pebble, they absolutely would have done the Pebble 2 without having done this on Kickstarter.
But the risk for Pebble would have been much, much greater. They would have had to take out a 90-day loan to pay the factory in China where the watches get
They sold
made.
1 million watches.
Dude, they sold.
They probably could have gotten by announcing this product, taking pre-orders
On their own
Right,
system.
they probably could have done that without needing they probably didn't need a Kickstarter.
so-
but I also so there's this thing about I've done a Kickstarter and I want to do another one, because there's this sense of gratitude that you establish with your backers and your community.
Well,
I could see wanting to do that
Yeah,
again.
and I mean, there's a huge community of people who good or bad, there are now people that like to spend time on Kickstarter looking for things that they think are cool to make them exist.
Right.
And those can be consumerist things like smartwatches that
Yeah.
are kind of dumb if we get down to it, or they can be art projects or small games, or there's a whole.
And I think those are all
bevy.
fantastic things to do on Kickstarter. I think that Pebble leverage the brand of Kickstarter and the awareness of Kickstarter, and to some extent the story they're telling is their previous success on Kickstarter and going back to the quote unquote community for a product that was delayed. To be honest, they kind of
This
they
time-
burned their initial community.
this
And
time-
I trust that this
Yeah.
time they'll be on time because they have the logistics figured out. They're a more legitimate company now. I think they could have done this on their own site, made more money, made more of the profits, but maybe not made as much overwhelming money because the story that media wants to tell is that now they've done a $12 million Kickstarter.
So there's two things. One is that getting people to sign up for your own site and put your credit card in someplace else is something that is hard to do.
Really hard.
So there's a big benefit to doing it on Kickstarter for that.
Exactly. They're leveraging the trusted system, which was built not for something like the Pebble 2.
There's a reason that Kickstarter used Amazon payments for the first 3 years of the site's existence. The other thing about building it yourself is if Kickstarter takes X percentage and they can't build, do they want to divert Pebble makes smartwatches. They don't make payment processing systems. Do they want to divert dev resources for X number of months or X number of years, or do they want to spend 3 days building a Kickstarter campaign?
Oh man, I would actually say that running a Kickstarter campaign, organizing all that, is a lot more work than incorporating a third-party payment system onto a website. Oh yeah,
But you have to do all the backing. You have to build infrastructure for that stuff.
Some, yeah. I mean, larger companies have more capabilities, but I mean,
I think you got to
even
play the
like,
Kickstarter game,
yeah,
which is that's the
thing.
where the labor is.
You have to do the updates and like the cheerleading, the marketing, the campaigning, like that stuff's all real tangible, and it takes time to plan. Like it's a lot. It's the Kickstarter is. For me, the Kickstarter was actually harder than actually making the game.
It's a calculated move, right?
Yeah.
And this is not the same as the equity argument, which is I'm totally on the side. I don't think a company like Oculus burned its backers by being bought.
Right.
But the pre-order system, I think Kickstarter needs to figure out what it wants to be, and maybe it's a branding thing. Maybe Kickstarter needs to have its this is Kickstarter. With some sub name to it, but under
Kickstarter product,
something like that,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Kickstarter, innovation dream site.
There's also a beauty to having the lines remain blurry because
Yeah.
there's a measurable value in having a huge project like this that attracts thousands and hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands at least of backers, because those people, there's a social network aspect to Kickstarter. And so when people come, they hear about some amazing big thing, they come to Kickstarter, they re-engage with the social network if they hadn't before. They talk to each other, they share about like, hey, there's this project going up, and they get more involved, they see more other projects. And if someone has like, a couple $100 to throw at a watch project, they probably have a lot more
Right.
expendable income to put
Which
toward other interesting
is my
projects.
point. This is something that Kickstarter wants, and I think that they have bought into it because it builds their brand. They get the cut. It builds, and maybe it's good in terms of their whole network as it brings exposure to other products. But as a pure economic decision, it is a calculated move on Pebble's part, and as a consumer, they are still taking the money. It's a pre-order system.
Well,
It's a little morally gray.
and it's also worth mentioning that it's not like this is much less of a gamble of a pre-order system than what was the original Pebble was what $99,
$99 for the
like
original.
which seemed for what they were promising seemed to like that. It actually tripped this might be bunk filters because it was a little too good to be true. We were seeing competing products from other companies, including like TI and Sony, that were going to cost a lot more money, and people that had pedigrees and all that. And it was surprising to have a non-incumbent come in and actually make something that turned out to be really good.
I just feel like consumers have fewer rights going through the Kickstarter system than they would do
Well,
traditional retail.
man, it's clear at this point, right? At this point, you have to know.
I
hey,
think you assume that's an assumption for the people who are informed, but I think more people should be informed because I think that's why people feel burned. Because if they have a lot of success, let's say they go through 4 Kickstarters that are really on their face pre-orders, and then they have a bad experience with another one. That's an inconsistent experience.
buyer beware, Norm.
It's tricky. I don't know. I mean,
Do you feel like on the game side, do you feel like the early access and all that stuff has helped kind of smooth the path? Because game development takes a long time,
Yeah.
and people are backing something, and then it takes 18 months or 2 years or 3 years or whatever to
Right,
deliver the game.
early access has been good for me. I mean, it was nice to be able to send out codes for Steam to the backers of the game. I had different tiers, like an alpha tier and a beta tier. That was part of my campaign. But when I started getting it out there and seeing that, like, hey, these people that believed in this project and wanted to support it and support me now have something that they can play. That
And give
felt really
feedback
good.
on too, right?
Yeah. It's my community's not huge, but the interesting thing has been, at least with Centrus, it's such a new weird thing that people don't always know what to say. So I get a little bit of feedback, but a lot of developers have talked to me about our community's so bad, like they're so demanding, or this or that, and I haven't experienced that. I don't quite know why.
Well, small communities are easier than big communities too.
I suppose so. Yeah. I think early access is a great part of the ecosystem for starting out as a creative. Like, I'm an emerging artist. If I have the ability to finish a game before it's done, to keeping my vision prioritized, then I'd prefer to do that. But also, this value. That
Oh,
I
you mean
get.
finish it before you show it to people? Before
Finish
you
it
release
before I
it?
release it. Yeah. Because just because early access is so weird, and it's like kind of a release, it's kind of not. It makes it more complicated to get a release news out later. So it's just it complicates things in this interesting way. But I think it's good, and I think that I'm glad it's there for people that need it. I personally am hoping to continue to use Kickstarter for my future projects, and maybe not early access if I can avoid it.
Okay.
Or at least not through Steam. I don't know.
But the actual Pebble news that came out that
Oh,
got
right.
us in this conversation
There's
is that
this- yeah.
in a week after they launched their second Kickstarter campaign, which I believe is at about $12 million now, they updated. They announced a new product, the Pebble 2 Steel, which again, it's a interesting calculated move that they wanted to do the $179 price point or $169, however much it was, for the Pebble 2, and then a week later, after they had got people to buy in, say, by the way, you can also spend extra $70 and upgrade to the Pebble 2 Steel.
You got to upsell those customers.
It is a really interesting. Like, you can't imagine someone doing this with their own retail site. Like, if someone.
I think this is common for Kickstarters. I actually introduced new reward tiers in the middle of mine, where it's like, hey, you're already supporting me. Thank you for that. Here's another thing that you might be more excited about, and you might want to like up your donation a little bit.
Right.
It's a strategy. It's a definitely this was
What-
planned.
Once people have given you money the first time, they're more likely to give you more if you ask for it.
And
Isn't
they
that
think
weird?
about it as
Yeah.
a sunk cost, that initial the initial support. So it's an incremental cost now, as opposed to it being, in this case, $250 for a watch. It's the $80.
Just another
upsell.
$80.
Exactly. I mean, it's economics that it's tried and true. The watch, it's steel bands, 3 colors: gold, silver, and I believe like a jet
Like a red?
black. A gunmetal black type thing, and 3 extra days of battery life. Otherwise, and different bands. But otherwise, it's the same.
They're also talking about using the bands as a way to extend the capabilities of the watch, which I thought was interesting.
Band as an antenna or something could be cool.
Well, band as a way to add sensors and stuff too.
Oh wow.
So
That's interesting.
I'm a little hazy on that stuff. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing before.
It's like materia from Final Fantasy VII.
I didn't play
You just
Final
like
Fantasy
put the
VII.
gems on the sword, but it's a watch now.
I didn't.
You can change the cape.
I didn't play Final Fantasy VII.
It's okay. It's not very good.
Oh wow, shots fired.
Just throwing down with the tested community.
Wow, I don't leave your Samantha Coleman can be found on the internet at the Unreal Engine. Okay, so a couple other small things we get through. I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about your time at Amazon before we finish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Google's launching a mobile network as an MVNO, which is a mobile virtual network operator. Basically, that means is they're buying network space from one of the other network providers, and they're doing it to experiment with having network access. So I assume that we'll see some sort of ubiquitous cell-based Google devices soon that aren't as ubiquitously connected as phones.
That sounds cool.
Seems interesting. The Unreal Engine, it doesn't mean that you're going to trade from Verizon or AT&T to Google as your ISP, mobile ISP now. So don't get too excited. The Unreal, Epic announced changes to the way Unreal Engine pricing works. Since you're here, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about this
yes.
and the Unity 5 stuff. So GDC is happening and Game Engine stuff happens there. Last year, Unity unveiled a free tier for Unity, right? Where you can basically just build a game.
So Unity Free has been a product for a few years.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly what announcement was made last year. I thought it was the Unity 5 announcement. So there's been until this announcement, there's been a free version and a pro version.
Okay.
The differences have been capabilities. So the pro version has some additional rendering capabilities, some additional effects, some additional features. What's the word? Performance analysis.
Okay, like debugging tools, stuff like that?
Yeah. And so now the free version is basically all those graphical features that were pro exclusive are in the free version.
Oh.
And there's a different kind of more specialized set of features that are in the new paid version.
So is the stuff that's more specialized is like for working on larger teams and stuff like that, or is it?
Unity has a built-in source control called asset server, so that's
Okay.
a team license required. That's in the paid version.
So that's you can put all of your stuff. Everybody shares all their assets on one server. It's asset management. It's like Git for
Yeah,
other
exactly.
stuff. Okay.
It's custom Git for Unity. Cloud build is a new thing.
Okay.
That's with Vive. It looks like beta access is also in here, and analytics, which I don't know much about.
And that's a monthly fee for Unity for the Pro.
So you can do it looks like it's there's a monthly fee and there's just a pay out of pocket one time per
Okay.
seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Epic changed the Unreal Engine 4 license, and now it's free as well.
Right. It had been a subscription.
You had to pay $20 a month or something like that. So these things have gone from being unbelievably expensive and difficult to get access to something that you can go to a website and put your credit card in
Yeah.
a few years ago, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But now Unreal Engine's free to use, and they don't take any money until you start selling something and making more than $3,000 per quarter, which I think is really interesting. And of course, like anything, these are deals that there's like a sliding scale. So like EA is not operating on the same deal that I would be if I wanted to go make my own game. And if you want to do real like heavy duty licensing, I'm sure you can still do that.
So I was in one of the early members of Unity as a QA director, and so we talked a lot about the democratization of game development. That is essentially making game development accessible to everybody, and like it's really manifesting these days. Like the fact that Unity's changed their free license, and Unreal has trying to compete with Unity for a while. That's really interesting narrative, right? This Unity as a scrappy underdog then becomes like this kind of larger, more entrenched standard, and then now Epic with the Unreal Engine's chasing that in a way.
Well, and so I took early Unity meetings when they were coming around and saying, "Hey, look, guys, we had this game engine," because we used to do game engine stories at the magazine that Norm and I worked at. And like it was, you kind of looked at it like, man, these people are crazy. There's no way they're never going to. And now because Unity was positioned well for mobile, which I think was Epic kind of caught on too late. They have a massive and they built good tools that are relatively straightforward for even people who are kind of neophytes to use, right?
A lot of people don't know that Unity began as a Mac-only tool.
Really?
Yeah, and so that's because the developers of it were Apple users themselves, and so they wanted to put this kind of like niceness of user experience into the engine, into the product. I think, maybe shifting the perspective of this a little bit. What's great is that there's now all sorts of different options, affordable options. It's really feasible to build a team and build a company and build a product and have a business starting from nothing.
It's a much lower risk because if you were doing the same thing 8 years ago, you'd have to raise a couple $1 million to pay id or Epic or Gamebryo or whoever it was at the time.
I think really that now with these prices, even with the revenue sharing, etc. The biggest hurdle that anyone that wants to make a game or interactive 3D art of any kind is facing is the elbow grease required to learn to program or learn to make art and operate the tools and build an audience and publish, like all the more like ground level activities, like keeping everything focused on that. It's possible to do this now for anyone. Like if I can do it, like I started learning to program like less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You can do it if you just practice.
Just every day, right?
Every day.
Work every
Write
day.
a little code every day. Make a 3D model every day. Just keep working on it.
I love watching. I love watching people do streams of their work. Like some work is more conducive to this, but Jane at Camposanto does streams where she posts her modeling. She does game modeling, and it literally like looking at a finished product and watching that finished product being made are two completely different experiences. In that I can look at the finished product and think, oh, there's no way I could ever make that. But if I watch her assemble it out of individual components, it's much more accessible.
Right.
And I think a lot of I mean, it's applicable to all parts of the making things spectrum.
For sure.
The last thing is an update from a story from a couple weeks ago. Lenovo, after the Snapfish debacle, is now saying that they're not going to ship Windows 10 PCs with any inessential or trivial tools, no bloatware. The language is vague enough that I'm still skeptical about what inessential or trivial tools are. I don't need a bunch of Lenovo McAfee stuff on my Lenovo laptops, but it's a step in the right direction.
I prefer this, of course, because it's anytime I get a computer that has all sorts of things
Oh, yeah.
installed, I just want to take it off the first moment anyway.
It's the first thing you do is get out the Windows disk,
Just
reinstall
reinstall,
Windows.
yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. And with the way Windows installs work on laptops now, it's much more difficult because a lot of times you don't even have a disk. The install is an image that has all the crap pre-built in, so then you reinstall and you're like, oh man, okay. Anyway, so that's that. Norm, what are your predictions for this week? You got any thoughts?
Oh my goodness.
Are there going to be a bunch of dads at a panel at PAX on Friday?
I'm just talking about
at noon?
GDC.
I know. I was
We
giving
have-
you an
we-
easy one there.
By the yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes to your first prediction.
I think you're 100% correct on that one.
I think the big takeaway, the big winner at GDC is going to be Valve, and the big surprise is going to be Nvidia. And I think Sony, which has a press conference today at 3 p.m. Pacific, I think.
Should I play the wah-wah music for Sony?
Yeah,
They have to
I
announce
think
something,
it's a
right?
tough position for Sony to be in to do Morpheus as a console only.
Especially
VR
on
peripheral.
on PS4. Although performance has gotten a lot better as different newer builds of Unreal have come out, it's still a little sketchy.
Yeah.
For I don't think you're going to see 90 hertz on something that looks like a next generation game on the PS4, at least not right now.
I predict we will in this generation. When you always see a growth throughout a generation of consoles, and I think 90 frames per second is going to be really necessary for VR.
Yeah.
So I think that people are going to be pushing to get that out of the PS4, no matter what.
Even if it means sacrificing the kind of detail that you see in stuff like the Order.
Games look fucking amazing. I can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, you swear all you want.
So, if they look maybe 10% less amazing but run smoother, I think that will be exciting and people will talk about it looking amazing for this different reason. So
Well,
I'm not too concerned.
And I mean, we've seen VR demos that are low poly and
Yeah.
look like it still looks amazing, even if you're talking about like a PS1 level of poly or
Yeah.
N64 level of polygons.
And that's where I think all the good VR content's going to come from. Exciting VR content where it's less AAA, spending $100 million on a game and then adapting it for VR because you need to make that money back with
Right.
the $60 standard console purchase. But where with Gear VR, the store launched this week and games are $3 to $6,
Okay.
and that's small indie developers who can build, who can fine tune a VR experience and experiment, and iterate, and not need to build a 10-hour game.
Well,
Right.
and I look at stuff like Keep Talking and Super Hot, and like some of the best VR experiences we've had so far have been like Super Hot is literally the same. It's just you run down a hall and you move your head to dodge the bullets, and time slows down, and like it's not a complex game, but it's very fun and works in the
Yeah.
context of VR. Samantha, can we talk about the Fire Phone a little bit with you?
Let's talk about the Fire Phone.
in a way that's not going to get you in trouble with lawyers or anything like that.
So after working at Unity, I was trying to be indie for a year, and that failed. Then I went to Amazon for a year and a half, and I worked on the Fire Phone for a while.
So this was
And,
like in mid 2000s,
this is
2008.
From late 2011
Okay.
to early 2013.
Okay.
So a year and a half.
It'd been in development for a long time.
I think it had been for more than a year before I joined.
Wow, 2010.
Yeah.
Did they start it out of Lab 123 down here, or was
126.
it 126?
It's
Sorry.
so that's it's a kind of a collaborative effort, right?
Okay.
So they were mostly focusing on the not exclusively, but mostly focusing on the hardware and the industrial design, and some of the software experiences, and then I was in a team for most of my time there that was on the design team.
Mm-hmm.
I was working as a design technologist, so I was programming software prototypes.
Okay.
That were trying to discover, like, okay, here are the ideas. Let's manifest these ideas in a prototypical way, and then have discussions and tweak them and find the feel and, learn about this problem domain, and then we can inform the engineers to build, say, like the gestures. When we have a gesture that feels right, let's get the programmers to build that same feel of gesture in, a more properly engineered way, instead of just like quick programming code or prototype code.
You guys would hack stuff together, see if it worked, see what stuck to the wall, and then pass it over for.
Did the eye tracking ever work to a point where you felt it would be useful or satisfactory?
There was always the potential was always really, really present. The lighting situations were always something that we considered, and I always thought about like the bus being the worst case scenario. Like if we could make it work on the bus case, then we were going to be solid. It seems like they weren't quite able to solve those problems in time for V1. But I don't know what they're doing next. I hope that they continue working on these problems, because it is really.
So what was exciting for you about that type of technology?
So I didn't know what I was going to be working on until like I walked into the building.
Really?
Like even I was sitting at orientation at Amazon, like, filling out paperwork and talking to people like, oh, like I'm at web services and I'm at, fashion, and what are you at? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm working on. So I walked into this like super secret building, and my manager said, oh, we're building a phone. And I was like, fucking cool, I get to work on a phone? This is amazing. So like the potential of it for gestures, for like almost like the Kinect-like capabilities of being able to do gestures with your hands in front of these cameras, being able to put it down on the ground or on the table and then kind of control it or manipulate it through using your head or the way you look at it. These things have always been really, really exciting. As we sort of started to hit walls, or maybe not walls, but started to find what works and what doesn't, and then getting feedback from the executives, including Jeff Bezos, about what is the desired experience here and what are the things to focus on. It became, I don't know, I always felt like I saw it as a totally new experimental platform that had a ton of potential but was super high risk. Yeah. And I think that eventually there was a lot of effort made to mitigate that risk in terms of making some safer choices that I think were detrimental at the end of the day.
Kind of more like a phone.
More like a phone. Yeah.
So you think the size of the screen kind of limited its ability to do a lot of the augment?
I think so. I
mean, perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it has pretty wide-angle cameras. I think more things like, Amazon had done tablets before this, and on a tablet you have a wide screen and you have this interface that's a shelf. Then you can sort of swipe through this carousel and you can see a few things on screen at once. And your usage pattern and what you want to look at on a phone is so different from a tablet. So in one level, the 3D home screen with the carousel. And these really rich icons that you can kind of look around, but you can only really see one thing to the left or right. It always seemed like it maybe could be, what if you could see more things on the screen? Because, like we're also used to the, what ended up being the favorites screen on the Fire phone.
Right.
As a default, even like a muscle memory, like, oh, I have my messages app here and I have my web browser here, and like my thumb wants to go to that spot. And then when you have introduced the challenge of like, oh, well, what are the last 3 things I used, and let me take a few moments to get there, that just, I think, became a little problematic for a phone user experience pattern.
I mean, it's a super interesting product, right? Because it was kind of an abysmal failure. I mean, not kind of.
I was really surprised by that. Even though I really wanted it to be successful.
Did you think that they were gonna? Did you think that they would release it at a time when it wouldn't be able to be successful, or were you surprised? Have you actually used it at all? The finished one?
Only at demos.
Okay.
Like demo kiosks.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough in a way that a lot of phones in like 2008, 2009 were rough. Like I just like, I think I look at that kind of that depth camera situation. I feel like that would be incredibly useful hooked onto a TV, right? Is a novel way to interact with the TV. But I fundamentally don't understand what reasoning got Amazon to putting that on a 5-inch phone.
Jeff Bezos has a vision, and he was just pushing on this a lot. And there were of course other things that I can't talk about at all.
Of course,
and I won't. That because things might appear later, right? And if there are future revisions of the device,
We talk about packing so many cameras on a phone and the increasing the processing power and good imaging algorithms. Like the stuff that Google's doing with Tango and stuff with the structure sensor with the real-time mapping, like that seems like the better use. Like the cameras are facing the wrong direction.
Yeah, I would have loved that device to have 2 stereo cameras on the back. I think that would have been really cool. I think also that someone saw, I don't remember his name, I think it was Johnny something, who did the head tracking prototype on the Wii.
Oh.
Yes, Johnny Chung.
Okay, Johnny Chung,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think someone saw that.
Yes,
I was like,
right.
what
The
if
TED
this
Talk.
was on a phone?
That's right. And that goes exactly to my first question about the size not being a problem, because when that demo was on a TV, where when you move around, there's enough space in the canvas to actually see depth changes.
Well, but there's another thing. There's a phenomenon when you watch the Johnny Lee video. It looks amazing
because you're also watching it on a 2D screen.
You're watching it on a 2D screen. So when it's monocular 3D versus binocular 3D, and in that sense, it actually kind of encroaches into this space of VR where you have this binocular 3D. I think that when you're looking at a video of any sort of head tracking device on a 2D screen, it looks more convincing than when you have it in your hand and you're looking at it with both your eyes.
Oh, you think it actually photographs better than it is?
Well, there's something that you can't. There's a logical leap you can't make, or there's something that is missing that doesn't come across as missing when you're watching a video of it. When you have 2 eyes and you're looking at a 2D screen that only has one perspective available to view, different from the 3DS, then it feels like there's something missing.
Well, the 3DS actually gives you 2 perspectives.
Exactly,
it
it gives you,
screen.
yeah, exactly. So actually, one of the things is if you do any of these head tracking demos that are on a 2D screen, but you close one eye, I think that they are exactly what you want them to be.
Well, your brain definitely picks up on, hey, there's a warped perspective thing happening here. Like when I was sitting here watching Norm use the Fire Phone, it was tracking to him. I was seeing the off axis, and it's super interesting. Like the monkey brain is interested in that. It's like when you see those sidewalk chalks, where somebody paints a tree that's 65 feet long on the sidewalk, and when you're standing in exactly the right place, it looks like it's popping up out of the sidewalk directly in front of you.
Right.
When you're standing beside those things, they're super compelling because it's so weird looking.
For sure.
Anyway.
It was a cool experience. I learned a lot. I'm glad I did it. I leveled up my programming capabilities. I also, Amazon does everything, so my non-compete kind of covered games. So I was really looking forward to going independent so that I could focus on my own game projects without having a legal conflict.
Ah, gotcha.
So that, I saved up a bunch of money from that sweet Amazon cash and then went independent but until that got me through the Kickstarter.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, I think that'll do it for news this week. Norm, any more predictions? Last chance.
Nope.
I'm going to play some music, and then we'll talk about what we've been testing. Norman Chan,
Yes.
what have you been testing, sir?
I've been using a lot of Gear VR. I've been looking a
define a lot.
like an hour before bed every night.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yes.
That is a lot of Gear
Maybe
VR.
it feels like an hour. It's more like half an hour to at least half an hour.
3.5
Affecting
hours.
your dreams?
I think I actually might have had a Gear VR dream. I also rewatched Inception lately.
Okay.
And those two things really fit well. They dovetail together really, really well.
Are you going to watch Inception on the plane with Gear VR this weekend when you go to Vegas?
So
Because that wouldn't be a bad idea.
to expound on, I had some thoughts last week about Gear VR. 16:9 content works so much better than the 21:9. in the Oculus Cinema, which is still, I think, the best app. And the thing that's really missing, I really wish, and there's no application I think it is right now, is some type of input on Vimeo, YouTube, or Twitch. In that
like a way to
environment.
play
Yeah.
YouTube
If I could
videos.
play YouTube videos in the Oculus Cinema or YouTube playlists,
or just
that'd be
Plex. Is there a so you're mostly using Oculus Cinema?
Yeah.
Have you played any games or anything that are compelling?
Yeah, and the games did come out. There's 2 different shooting games that I liked. One shooting game, like they're all head tracking, since I don't have the controller yet. One of the head tracking ones, you look at the ships and they fire the missiles, which I think is okay. But I really like the other one where you tap the touchpad on the right side of your head, the Cyclops simulator.
The Cyclops game was fun.
And there's another game that you can actually walk. You need to actually walk 360 to fly around their environment, and that is just unlike anything. I mean, you can play it while sitting on a swiveling stool, but I play it while standing up, and you get lost in that.
Norm,
easily.
have you played Temple Run?
I do not like Temple Run.
Why do you not like
Temple Run Oculus is. It didn't work.
It's bad. It makes you nauseous.
It did. Yeah, it wasn't a compelling use of the. I thought of the VR thing, which I thought like an endless runner would be perfect for VR, but I think the speed at which you're moving wasn't right.
It was profoundly uncomfortable for me. Of course, I was also riding in the back of a car as we were driving down Windy S, California 1. I tested metal. I got a metal detector.
What brand?
A Bounty Hunter Super Shooter 2.
Is this like one of those things with the big disc?
How much
you
do
walk on the beach?
metal detectors go these days?
There's a range. You can get like kid-friendly ones for $50, and yeah, it is the thing with the disc on the bottom.
Kid-friendly
Cool.
one is $50.
Kid-friendly.
Holy
Well, I mean,
crap.
they have cheaper ones, but like the one made by the people that make the grown-up metal detectors for kids is $50.
Okay.
I looked at that, but the pole was too short. I ended up getting the Sharpshooter 2, which was $150.
It's not that bad. It's like this is like the Star Trek tricorder because you're detecting elements in your in your peripheral.
There's a fairly steep learning curve to metal detector use. I wasn't aware of this, but there's all sorts of stuff that you have to do. Like you can set it to filter out ferrous metals, like iron and steel and stuff like that. You can set it to like as you get more and more false positives, you can trim those out too, kind of squelch them like you're on a CB radio. It's a weird hobby, and I didn't find the thing I was looking for, so it was a complete
Okay. Well,
I lost my wedding ring in a shoot last week. Yeah, it was great.
Where?
In a quarry in Santa Cruz.
In a rock quarry.
In a rock quarry that we don't have, that I can't just go to anytime. We have to get access to. It's privately held.
It was very unfortunate.
It was not good, and the shoot was kind of underwhelming too, which you'll know about later. But anyway, so yeah, metal detectors. I'm going to practice more with the metal detector just because now I need to get my $150 worth out of it.
Pacific has a lot of beaches.
Pacifica does have. I feel like a real dirtbag going up and down beaches looking for people's lost jewelry. I
it's
feel
okay.
weird about that.
Will, you know what? I could always picture you as that guy.
Oh, thanks.
So just go for it.
You remember in that scene in Indie Game, the movie, where there's like they go out, it's outside Santa Cruz, and it's just the dude with the metal detector.
Yeah,
you could be that guy.
I could be that dude. Great. Get Edmund McMillan up, and we'll recreate some Indie Game the movie scenes. I also have a new 3DS here. Hold on.
Is it the XL?
It's only the XL in the
that's
US.
Right. Okay.
So,
What are you playing?
Majora's Mask.
Yes.
Which is, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Majora's Mask is a much better game than I gave it credit for in like 1985 or whenever it came out.
It's a pretty great game. I like
It's
it.
a really big.
It's like the Duke of 3DSs. So the thing there's a couple things they changed on it. One is it has a couple of shoulder bumpers that weren't there before. It has the Lenovo style thumbstick to move camera controls in, I think, only Monster Hunter right now.
Okay. Because it's not working. That's not working.
It doesn't do anything here, yeah. I mean, but Zelda's an N64 game, so it wouldn't have had it used those 4 buttons for camera controls. The big thing, though, is that they do head tracking or eye tracking for the 3D, so it shifts the 3D image behind the lenticular screen so it lines up right all the time. And you don't have to hold it. See, Samantha's doing the thing where you hold it exactly in the right sweet spot for for 3D.
Right.
Now you can like shift it around, get all sorts of weird angles, and it still tracks 3D.
Even right now, I'm using the hook shot.
Yeah.
So the hook shot, when you pull it out, it goes into a first-person view, and you can use the gyro to aim it. And because it's the 3D is more stable, so you can actually move it around, and it doesn't break the.
That's exactly.
It doesn't break the 3D. I'm really, really pleased about this.
I really like. So I had to launch 3DS.
Yeah, the 3D is really good on this.
I used 3D in like a little bit of like the Mario 3D Land game because you kind of needed it for some of those top-down segments. Usually turned it off. A little bit in push mode maybe. I'm leaving it on as often as not. The only knock against it is it does still really impact your battery life.
Right.
Because there's 2 screens. But
it's just the eye strain is just not there.
It's
the
much,
way it was in the old one.
That's exactly it. Like I can tolerate. It's not even tolerating. It's actively pleasant. Like last night I was doing. There's a segment in Majora's Mask where you have to swim through these rings to unlock something. It was nightmarish in the 2D mode. I flipped on 3D and did it in the first try.
That's great.
So
that's fantastic.
It's a really convincing illusion.
It's a really nice upgrade. Like the thing that's always the question with these mid-cycle kind of bumps, it has a little bit faster processor, so stuff opens a little bit faster. It's unclear how many games are actually going to support this stuff. It could end up being like the Game Boy Color, where a lot of games ship with original 3D mode, and then you if you have the color, you get 4 colors or whatever. I don't know what their ecosystem is going to look like for this.
I'm testing it right now. If I hold it upside down, there's some bugs if I hold it upside
weird.
down. Testing.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing your head's mounted the right way. It loses.
The other thing is that if you make something that really takes advantage of the new processor or the thumb pad, that means that you can only have the game on the new 3DS, which reduces the size of your audience.
Given that there's like a bazillion old 3DSs out.
Yeah.
It seems like something that people will make enhancements for rather than original titles. Anyway, I quite like it. I thought it's pretty good, especially if you have an old busted 3DS like I do and needed a new one. The transfer save process is still awful, even by Nintendo standards.
Okay.
And it doesn't come with a power brick, which is super dumb.
So weird.
It's like $10 extra. I bought a USB cable that has the 3DS plug on the end and plug it into a smart power brick, and that seems to charge it. So,
I guess we're in this weird place where it's no longer necessary to have a charger included. But
why not make it micro USB at that point, right?
I don't know.
Nintendo.
Hey, they can always look. It was like the Wii, right? The Wii was a cheap console, but then the controllers, you wanted all those controllers for the games, you had to pay out the ass for those.
How many Wiimotes?
I think I have 6 laying around my house or something.
Well, yeah, and then they upgraded them, and
They've always been so good about the upgrades, like just consistent stuff.
Keep hammering it. Norm, you've been testing a couple of Motorola phones.
I just got my Moto E in.
This is the one that Patrick had last week.
Today, $150 smartphone with LTE. I don't think that. I mean, this is not going to be the phone that I eventually switch to, but I from all reports, it's a very capable $150 off contract phone. I think it'll be interesting. I'll use this for a week or two and see how it is. It's not a bad design. Kind of good phone to give your kids. The first.
Well, it's off contract, $150 too, exactly. Which is
so good replacement phone also.
Yeah.
Good.
Note 4 is the other phone I've been testing. I'm gonna switch to that. It's got my micro SIM card adapters. So I'm going to switch to that soon. I'm liking it so far a lot. It's really, really fast.
So you're coming up from the Moto X right now?
Moto X 2014.
So this is a bigger phone for you, the Note?
Bigger phone.
Are you adjusting to that? You've had big phones before. That OnePlus One was huge.
It's actually, this is small. It feels smaller than the OnePlus One.
Oh, okay.
So I like that. And I really am not having a big problem with the texture of the back or anything. And maybe I appreciate it a little less than the well-designed iPhones, but it's okay. And then a Lumix camera,
Micro Four
Thirds, compact fixed lens, $630 camera. But it's I would not. It's technically in the compact camera category, but this is really like a higher end camera than your Sony RX100s.
It looks like a great piece of gear.
Yeah.
And then does it do video and
video? Does 4K.
No
4K
kidding.
30s.
30 minutes limit.
30-minute limit. Everything.
Wow, I might have to jump in on that.
How does it compare to your RX? Your
I
Sony
haven't
camera?
done enough comparisons yet. The
Okay.
the RX I have is actually, I think, more expensive than this, but this is bigger sensor with micro four thirds, and the lens is supposed to be really nice, and a lot of manual controls, which I like.
I like a lot of rings. Is that an aperture ring? That's
It's an
clicky?
aperture ring on the front,
Nice.
shutter dial on the top, exposure dial on the back, and it's a lot of options.
My prediction on this is that you're going to really like having a manual aperture ring right there.
I never really changed that.
Really? Oh, you just set it wide open, huh?
I set it wide open most of the time.
Okay.
It's either wider landscapes, go to 9.
Norman
You
Chan.
gotta get the field of view. You gotta narrow that thing
Yes,
down.
yes.
Get the
Widest.
good,
Yes.
what's it
Bokeh.
called? But the bokeh. Thank you. I love the bokeh.
Norm's addicted to bokeh. He's got a real problem.
Buttery smooth.
Samantha, anything you would like to talk about? And we should have probably talked about this before we started the show, but
I mean, I got to play with the new 3DS a little bit, a little while ago. Gosh, I mean, I don't know, the things that I've just been spending so much time. I guess no. I guess I don't. I wish I did.
fair enough. Let's take a couple of questions and we'll call it a show.
Emails? Well, but we do the other one.
Email.
'Cause it's, we don't do emails. We do
Emails?
No. Questions. Boom.
If you have a question for This Is Only a Test, the email address is podcast@tested.com. I had Brad's intro really low this week. Our first question comes to us from Carl. Carl says, hello! It's all caps with an exclamation point. I've owned smartphones since the G1, which I assume is the LG G1, the HTC G1. Batteries always sucked on these devices, be it Apple or Android. I just bought the 6 Plus after upgrading from a Galaxy S5. I'm not asking for battery saving tips, but rather, how do each of you maintain your charge throughout the day? I'm to the point where I have a USB cable at my bed, in my car, at my desk, and it almost doesn't feel like enough. Do you ever get anxiety when away from a charger or drastically change your smartphone habits when your phone is below 30%? By the way, I don't subscribe to the idea of turning off all the features on a smartphone in order to save battery. I'd rather have a dead smartphone than a dumb phone that lasts all day.
I've always tried this kind of simple trick, which is I don't do small incremental charges.
Okay.
I will, especially when a phone is new or any device with a battery, I'll run the battery all the way down, deplete it completely until like a computer, the phone shuts off. And then I will plug it in and make sure that it charges up completely.
So it's generally a good idea to do that. Like you don't have to do it every time, but regularly, because the battery controllers on laptops and phones can the battery doesn't develop a memory, but the laptop, the charger, the charging circuit will kind of forget where zero is
Right,
after a
right.
while. Because lithium-ion batteries, you don't want to drain all the way, but the phone or the laptop will generally prevent you from doing
Right.
damage to the battery. I think that's a definitely a good thing to do. I find that when my phone's getting a little short, if I run it all the way down and then charge it back up again, it'll have gotten that gap back. A lot of times if you have an LTE phone and you have battery problems, it's because you live in an area that has spotty LTE coverage or just spotty coverage in general. Carl's from Arizona, which I would
Okay.
think is a little more, could be remote. I don't know.
Right.
If your phone gets warm when you're driving around, you're in and out of signal, probably means that that's what's happening.
Okay.
Because like the Duke here, I never ever run out of battery on. Like even tromping around conventions, CES, whatever, all day using the phone all day, tethering my laptop to it,
Yeah.
doing all sorts of reckless battery endangering things. I have yet to run out of. I mean, we did a live stream where we had a movie running for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
streaming.
Wow, okay.
I still had like 60% battery at the end of the day.
Nice. Okay.
Norm, do you have any?
I charge at night, and then I use heavily in the morning, so I charge put in the car, and then I charge in the car. Cars at night, car and at night.
So the other thing I would say is if you're paranoid about battery, you can get a charger brick that's basically just a lithium-ion battery with a USB port on it for like $30 or $40 at this point, and that will be enough to save you if you reach the end of the day and you're out of battery and you're freaking out too.
Another thing I'll do if I feel like I'm getting in close to an emergency, like if I'm at 10% or 20%, if I know that I don't need to call somebody or text somebody or be online, I'll actually just turn on airplane mode, and then I'll just let it sit with the device like that. That reduces the battery consumption so much. I've discovered.
Oh, yeah.
just turning off the cellular for like an hour
And
until I need it.
And
like-
then you flip it back on.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
And you
Yeah.
can still have Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Taylor writes in and says, hey, I'm thinking about building a new computer soon. Mine's starting to show its age. I've been reading stuff lately. Do you think it's worth waiting for Skylane because Broadwell was delayed? And I'd love your opinions on when you think the best time is to build a new computer.
We haven't tested a new Broadwell U system yet, but from all reports, those are fantastic. So
Which is the desktop version of Broadwell for...
or just the full powered, not the core, the Y ones.
So you think it's okay? I mean, do you think Intel's going to push their whole schedule out 6 months because of the Broadwell delay? Or are we going to see Skylane in like June, July IDF timeframe?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, here's the good news about CPUs is where you're at now, unless you're doing stuff that's really CPU bound, like encoding massive videos and stuff like that, you're probably going to be okay, even if you're building a high-end gaming PC, because you're much better off spending money on video card than CPU at this point.
Yeah, CPUs unfortunately are not my wheelhouse. I mean, I would say if you need a computer now, build
Right.
the best one you can afford right now.
If you're playing games today that don't run as well as you want them to run, the GeForce 980 is relatively new. I think this is a fine time to build a computer.
For sure.
And always, I always we get those emails occasionally, like, hey, my computer broke 3 months ago and I'm waiting for blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, if your computer broke
Yeah.
and you have money to buy a new computer, the computer that you will buy today is better than not having a computer right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be out of date in 3 to 6 months, no matter what you do. So
Exactly.
just go for what works
Just
for you.
don't
when you
worry
need
about it. Don't worry about your computer going out. It'll be fine. Just budget so that you can do a video card upgrade 3 years in, and you'll be great for a decade. Scott from Iowa here. I'm looking to finally drop DirecTV and try cord cutting. I'm looking into migrating over to a TiVo Romeo over-the-air box with an antenna. I know Will's had his TiVo for a while now and was hoping that he could chime in on how well he likes the service, along with annoyances that come with it. Their OTA box doesn't allow for the lifetime subscription, so you have to do the $15 a month option, but that's still much cheaper than I'm currently paying for TV. So yeah, so what that is it's basically a TiVo. Normal TiVo boxes have cable card slots, so you plug them into the back, and that handles all the decryption stuff, so that you don't have to have an external cable box. The over-the-air models don't have the cable card business, and basically just have an antenna, and you can record, I think 4 or 6 or something over-the-air channel. Probably you can record all of the over-the-air channels you get constantly. I'm a little weird about, I think that TiVo's $15 a month seems fair when you have 300 channels that you're trying to get it to filter down to something reasonable. I feel like that's a little bit much especially if you're in an area where you only have 3 or 4 over-the-air channels, which includes San Francisco. San Francisco, we can't get NBC over the air.
Okay.
Because it's in San Jose and not San Francisco.
Okay.
So, I love the TiVo. It is a thing that means... ironically, I spend $15 a month to watch less TV.
That's great.
Because it's only every time if I sit down in front of it, it has everything that I've recorded. It's becoming less useful in a world of Hulu and
Streaming,
Apple TV and Netflix and all that stuff, because I'm much more likely you then have to play I want to watch Mad Men. I don't think we were able to record that on the TiVo, so that's probably on Apple TV or something instead. And it's all fragmented and segmented now.
Yeah.
I don't know how long TiVo is going to be able to get away with charging $15 a month for their service.
Seems like a lot.
It is like I said, 10 years ago it was incredibly valuable. Now it is much less so. So I don't know that I would switch to that now unless you just absolutely need a PVR with over the air.
I do think it's great to make going to over the air where there's just less to watch. That means you spend less time watching things, and that might maybe get to do more activities. I don't know. I love TV, but also have been really curbing my own television in the last few years. So.
Well, I mean, the thing, it's like anything. Everything's good in moderation, right? Pick 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
Don't watch 2 or 3 things a night.
Exactly.
James writes in and says, hey guys, I'm looking for a keyboard case for my iPad 4. What would you recommend? Years ago, I loved the Zag Folios, and clamshell cases were... Okay, anyway. That's it. Norm, do you have a keyboard case?
I don't use keyboard cases.
The one thing that I like, I did a show and tell for it, which will be up soon. Let's see if it's in here. There we go. Is this guy? It's not a case. It's just a clamshell keyboard that opens up. It's Microsoft's universal Bluetooth keyboard, and I like it because it has a little trough that you can put your phone or tablet into. So you don't have to have it attached all the time, which is what I don't like about keyboard cases. They make a very thin, easy to carry device, kind of fat and unwieldy.
And they just announced a similar thing that's foldable, so it's half the size.
Yeah, it's much more expensive though. So that one's $60. The foldable and half one is, I think, $95.
$100.
Yeah, which like, I thought $60 was expensive. So 95 seems like crazy town. I don't know for sure. Are you carrying an iPad still or no?
I carry the Dell tablet.
That Dell. You never use a keyboard with it?
No.
See, I've started when I go on like 1 or 2 night trips. Sometimes I'll take just the iPad and that keyboard for answering emails and occasional like light web stuff, which is pretty useful. Let's see if we have one more question here. I'm clicking through. Thomas wants to know, hey guys, my 11-year-old son has recently started showing interest in playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've never played it before, and so I have no idea where to start. What do you guys recommend?
I've never played Dungeons and Dragons before.
Neither have I. I figured you would have.
We are the worst people to help you answer this question. I'm sorry.
The thing that everybody tells me when I say I've never played Dungeons and Dragons is that I should probably play Pathfinder, which I think is a like entry level riff on Dungeons and Dragons. So there you go. Don't ask us that. I know the Giant Bomb guys are actually doing a D&D campaign right now, so maybe ask them. They might be a good solution. And Jordan says, hey guys, it's Jordan from Melbourne. Melbourne? Is that how you say Melbourne? Melbourne, Australia. I have a minor problem. I seem to go through earbuds and earphones on average every 2 months. I only use them around home, but I'm usually out in the shed and they occasionally get caught on things or when I'm going to sleep, in which case I end up wrapped in the cord when I wake up. Are there any good, durable headphones? I've tried cheap ones, I've tried expensive ones, and they all seem to stop working at the connection back to the phone within a few months. If you wiggle the wires, they seem to work in certain positions, but not in others. Do you have any good, durable earbud recommendations or ones with replaceable cords? I'm not too fussed on price if they last me years, but I'm sick of paying a ton for 2 months of life.
The Sony ones, I think, are the Wirecutter recommended ones, so I would go with those.
So yeah, Sony recommends. Wirecutter recommends a pair of. In general, on stuff like this, Wirecutter is a really good recommendation. The other thing is, I would say if you're getting cords wrapped around your neck when you're sleeping with headphones, maybe you shouldn't sleep with headphones. You might get a small speaker instead and try that. It doesn't even have to be like a Bluetooth one. You can just get a $15 speaker that plugs into your phone's headphone jack and will not asphyxiate you. Samantha, are you hard on earbuds?
I am. I always go over the ear with the headphones these days instead of earbuds, but yeah, probably not so practical when sleeping.
So the over the ear, we tested a bunch of sleeping headphones once upon a time.
I remember this, yeah.
They were all really bad and super uncomfortable. And also, you shouldn't sleep where you can't hear things like smoke alarms and stuff like that. Just general good ways to live your life safely.
The Sony ones are actually, they don't sell them anymore, so it's the Bayer Dynamic MMX 102IE.
How much are those?
$100.
Oh, that's okay. No replaceable cables on those, I bet, at that price point. If you want to get replaceable cables, you have to buy like Etymonix that are going to be $400 or $500, and I don't think I would take that gamble if you're killing earbuds in 2 months. I find over the ears to be much more robust than earbuds, generally speaking.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, and you get more bass always because the air can just move.
Well, and they're more comfortable for long periods of time too, I think. That'll do it for us this week. Thank you so much for coming by, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me.
People can find you on Twitter
I am at Samantha0, Zero, on Twitter. SamanthaKalman.com, TambourInteractive.com. If you're in Seattle, check out InvisibleArcade.com. And that's all the stuff.
We should talk about it. Invisible Arcade's a cool event. You do it. It's a monthly thing?
Not quite. We're trying to make it monthly.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like a video game celebration. We do a small expo, a couple of games, and then all the games are performed by a player, almost like a live stream, but I think of it more of like a concert style.
It's like in bars and stuff like that. So people.
Yeah. We have this one spot that has a gigantic projector on a wall. So we're trying to find like lots of cool venues and things like that.
Cool.
And that's a thing. And Centrus is on Steam.
Yeah. So Steam Early Access. Anything else?
No, just those 500 things.
Okay. Sounds good. Norm, you're going to Vegas this weekend for fun.
Going for Vegas for fun. You'll be at PAX.
I will be at PAX East. The panel's at noon on Friday in Bumblebee, I think.
Apple's announcing details on Watch on Monday.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Busy week, busy month. And stay tuned for some VR talk from GDC.
Yeah. See you guys next week. Today's outro comes... Oh, go ahead.
Nothing.
Oh, no. Okay. Thanks for coming by, Samantha. This has been fun. You'll
It's
have to
been
let us know when you're
awesome.
down next time.
Yeah, I will. I mean, yeah, you guys are great, and I'm really glad to be here and hope to be back.
It's always good to get new perspectives. So, I did like sarcastic air quotes there by accident, but that wasn't my intention. Today's outro comes from Ad Hoc. Here it is. See you guys next week. Hi there. I didn't see you. Tested. If you could make a shiv out of a stainless steel toilet, you rule the prison. Also, can I use your bathroom? Tested.